Content Advantage, a talk show for content professionals about content. My name's Val Swisher, and I will be your host and moderator of the Content Advantage today. My guest today is Alyssa Fox, who I consider a colleague and friend. She's the Vice President of Channel Marketing at cybersecurity provider Alert Logic. And today we're going to be talking about how Alyssa made the move from a technical writer to marketing director and the various tactics that she used to grow her career. Hello, Alyssa, how are you?
Hi, Val, I'm doing well. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Where are you broadcasting from today?
I'm in Houston, Texas, where it's actually colder than it normally is.
All right, well, I am in the wine country in California, where it is warmer than it's supposed to be and unfortunately drier as well. So before we get started, I want to tell our audience a few things. First of all, today's show is being recorded. Second, we cannot see you and we cannot hear you, so you don't have to worry about your mic or how you look or anything like that today. But you may ask a question, and really we encourage you to ask questions. There should be a question tab in your viewing panel. And we also have a lot of additional content for you that you can access, and it's handouts and different content provided by our sponsor, Zoomin Software. Okie dokie. So Alyssa, could you briefly just tell us a bit about you and your connection to technical communications and marketing?
Absolutely. So I started my career in technical communications. I found a co-op job in college that was looking, a company that was looking for technical writers. And I never heard of technical writing, but I was very excited because I enjoyed writing and I enjoyed technology. The internet really became popular when I was in college and more widespread. And I was just ecstatic that I'd found something that could marry my interest in both of those. So that's how I got into technical writing and technical communication. And I did that for a number of years, kind of rising through the management ranks. I led teams of technical communicators and UX writers. And then I started getting involved in content strategy late in my information development career. And that's when I started getting interested in marketing and how I could possibly have a bigger impact on the business and be closer to numbers and customers, and how I could bring the technical communication content to customers. So I started looking at ways that we could work with marketing on the technical communications team, and we started building content strategy at the company I was at the time for the whole company. And that's how I ended up moving over to marketing through that content strategy effort. And I've been in marketing ever since for the last few years.
Wow, interesting. Because I think there are a lot of people joining us who really are curious about that switch. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you made that transition? Because to some people, TechComm and marketing are, other worlds apart. So How did you switch over?
Right. So when I was working in TechComm, I was very interested in not just documenting a product, but actually explaining how the product helped people solve their everyday problems in their jobs. And honestly, in my opinion, that's what technical communication should be. It should be all about, here's how you use our product or solution or service to help you do your job. And so I kind of gotten really as far as I could in my existing company at the time. With TechComm, my team was just cranking along, doing what I wanted them to be doing. They were thinking about things like user experience and how do we get more involved in the business? How do we make our documentation and how-to videos and inline help available so that people looking for information about our products and solutions actually can use that kind of content to make those buying decisions. And so when I got involved in thinking about that, I started talking to marketing and saying, okay, what content do you have that we could potentially use in our technical content? For example, product overviews. We want to make sure that marketing is telling the same story about what our product is as what we say it is in the technical documentation. So that's kind of what started my journey, really. And when I started talking to marketing and realizing that they had about 17 versions of a product overview for the same product, I was like, whoa. we need some kind of content strategy that we can share across the organization to reuse content, share content, say the same things, tell the same story, yes, from different viewpoints, but still the same story, and start looking at how that content flows from here's what the company does and how we help you to here's what our product or solution does and how we help you. And then here's how you actually do that from a step-by-step standpoint with our product or solution. And so that's what really started me interested and working on that content strategy initiative that brought those two organizations together.
Interesting. So your content strategy initiative was not just focused solely on technical communications, is what I'm hearing.
Right.
That's
Yes.
really
And it all
interesting.
started with that one paragraph product overview, just thinking, why are my technical writers writing this when I'm sure marketing has something? Well, yeah, marketing had way too much something. We just needed that one little thing. And then I was like, okay, we got to get our arms around all this content and the way that we produce it and the way that we connect our marketing story with our technical story.
Interesting. At that time, did you find any pushback, or was it difficult convincing, the marketing folks who are marketing folks, maybe we should change and maybe pick one way of saying this? What was the reaction?
Oh, yeah. I definitely got pushback. Well, first of all, I had to explain what content strategy was until I was blue in the face. And even going through the whole 6-month pilot project and everything past that, I was constantly explaining and re-explaining what content strategy was and why it was important. And as that part of that content strategy, of course, thinking about how we write content, use content, manage content, that was something marketing hadn't really thought of. And when I started explaining the cost savings, the potential revenue producing content that could come out of this content strategy, then their ears perked up a little bit more. It was a lot of education, really. I mean, it took me a full year to get from when I first started talking about it to and building a business case for a pilot project and running a pilot project all the way until the chief marketing officer at the time finally went, you know what? We do need somebody working on content strategy within marketing, and then expanding it out to an enterprise-wide content strategy.
Oh, that's great. And what an amazing opportunity,
It really was. And a lot of work to do, but that's what was exciting about it, right?
I can only imagine just how much work that was to do. So tell me, kind of, how did you do it? How did you bridge the TechComm and the marketing? And then if you could talk a little bit about the benefits, because this was not a simple task, I'm sure.
Right.
So how did you do it? And then, what came out of that?
Right. So I made sure, well, I mentioned the business case. So I did build a business case first. And that was, the business case was specifically to get time basically from some people on both the marketing team and the TechComm team to work on initiatives like this. And, I talked in that business case about what money we might save by having this content strategy and a content management system that went along with it. I talked about money we might make from the way that we put our content out there, especially on the marketing side, and how that content could generate revenue and bookings. And then I also talked about the costs potentially of tools that we might use to help us with this, but then the savings that offset that. So there was a lot of math in my business case, but it resonated with the chief marketing officer and then the general manager of product, who was my manager at the time. And so I was granted permission to start working on this pilot project and get the right people involved. And I think the key points of that, of bridging the TechComm and marketing, especially at the beginning point, was first of all, showing everybody involved what was in it for them, because nobody wants to do anything if they're not going to get a benefit, and I'll talk about the benefits in a minute. And then also to take a look at what similarities we had. What did we do alike in marketing and TechComm, and how could we leverage those to really make sure that we're doing less work in the future and receiving both the cost benefits as well as time benefits from that. So when I started with the what's in it for me, I looked at marketing and said, okay, if you guys have 17 versions of a product overview, what happens is when that translates into conversations with salespeople and buyers going down the buyer's journey to, make a decision of being aware of a problem they have and then trying to find a solution and then making a decision on how to solve that with which organization and then actually buying, thinking about what the marketing team would benefit from. And having a consistent story is like number one in marketing. In my opinion, everything you do in marketing rests on content, and that comes from the story you're trying to tell. And if you have people confused about your story, whether you're saying different things on the website or saying one thing on the website and something else in social media and all of that sort of thing, then first of all, you're not going to make money from people if they're confused. They want a consistent story about what their issue is and how you can help them do that. So that was a huge benefit for marketing, just getting the story straight. And then going from there, when I showed them how they could save time and energy with a content management system and not having to rewrite content, and that they could use bits of, overviews or types of content and from this ebook and then move it over to snippets that you can use in social media or other, single sourcing, just like we do in TechComm. They didn't know it was called single sourcing because frankly, they never did it. So that was a big deal for marketing. So TechComm already really kind of understood the benefits of content strategy. They may not have called it content strategy, but they understood single sourcing. They understood the savings they were receiving from that. So that was an education to the marketing team for sure. And then also we had a process workshop where we did show the similarities in how marketing generated and published content and how TechComm generated and published content. And we found out what we did alike and what we could learn from each other in creating a content end-to-end workflow for across the organization.
Very interesting. One of the things I've always noticed is that TechComm is almost always a cost to the corporation, and marketing is almost always tasked with being revenue generation. Right. So it sounds like bringing them together sort of gets the best of both worlds, right? So right. You can try to bring the costs of TechComm producing technical content down while maximizing the potential to generate more revenue. Yes. So that's very, very interesting. Someone just asked a question that really was in my mind as well, so I'm just going to go ahead and ask it now. Can you talk a bit about the content management systems that you have found success with when having a single source of truth between TechComm and marketing? Right. Both teams have different needs for output formats and different tolerance for complexity in the authoring tools. And, yes. I think that's almost the question of the moment is, right. How are you doing that? So, I mean, as anybody in TechComm or marketing knows, there's a ton of content management systems out there, right? All for and a lot of times in marketing, they don't understand that a web CMS is not necessarily the same as just a straight CMS or a CCMS, a component content management system. So, I mean, we could have a whole other show just on content management systems. So I won't go too deep here, but what I will say is that in our research, our TechComm team was already using SDL. I believe they have another name now. So we were pretty successful in that. It's a component content management system because the way that you write technical content, you're typically reusing a lot of snippets and bits and paragraphs and that sort of thing. So when I was talking with the marketing team, I proposed a component content management system, which blew their mind because they didn't know what that was. They didn't understand single sourcing. They didn't understand a lot of the concepts and principles that TechComm is founded on as far as operational content development, right? So the reason I proposed a component content management system over a more traditional just content management system or a web content management system is because I felt like that would give us the biggest bang for our buck across the organization, because I was starting with marketing and TechComm, but I had hoped to also eventually include professional services content. Like when they go out for an implementation, they take notes on things that either the documentation was lacking or, a misconception perhaps that the buyer had that perhaps the technical implementation person didn't know. So there was a miscommunication there, that sort of thing. So I felt like we would get the most bang for our buck with a component content management system. And so when I proposed that to marketing and explained to them why, there's a lot of education there because they're not, marketing people typically will go write something in Word and then their creative team will dump it in an InDesign template or something like that. And there's a lot of impractical and time wasting effort in marketing content production. I've noticed more and more as I've gotten into marketing. So I'm like, why can't you just have a Word template that
typically, just kind of mimics the InDesign so that we can, edit this more easily without needing the creative team all the time. So that's where your component content management system comes in, right? And if you're reusing this content in multiple ways in multiple teams, that's why I felt like that was the way to go. And, we did an evaluation of several of them. And frankly, it's been a few years, so I can't remember all of the ones that we looked at. But we did settle on a component content management system that we were planning to purchase and bring in. And again, that went into the business case, right? If we have to buy a cloud-based CCMS versus an on-prem CCMS, what's that cost going to be? What's the maintenance? All of that. And all of that needs to be figured in when you're having this kind of conversation with a cross-team effort like this.
Very interesting. What I find when I work with customers in this way, I get a lot of pushback in two areas. When I'm trying to bridge TechComm and marketing and say, let's all have the same CCMS. Look at all the great things we can do. Really, this is great. The two things, and you can address them however you want. The first is marketing will also often say to me, oh, you are taking away my creativity because you are making me reuse content. And look at my great vocabulary. I know 17 words.
I know lots of big words.
I know lots of big words. And, I was taught to use them. So the first is, oh, this whole single sourcing thing, it's, taking away my creativity. The second, and that one I sort of kind of laugh at a bit, not at them, but just to myself.
Right.
So, if I have any customers listening, it wasn't you. I wasn't laughing at you. The second thing is the authoring interfaces that up until very recently, writing for TechComm in a component-based content management system, it was almost like you had to be half coder, half writer.
Right.
And the fact that there's no, well, if you're used to Word, the WYSIWYG isn't quite as important because the layout happened later, but then just this whole interface where it's very complex.
Right.
So can you address sort of both of those?
Sure.
I'm really curious to understand how you did this.
So I got both of those arguments when I was working on this as well. So first one, to address the creativity thing. This is another reason I pushed for the CCMS, because I said, look, if you have a CMS or a digital asset management system where you're storing assets by the full asset, like the full white paper is in there as a PDF file, or the full ebook is in there as a PDF file, or an infographic as a JPEG file or whatever, and those are kind of not editable, then yeah, I see where you're coming from. However, with a component content management system, and I explained to them, you can have components that are as large as a paragraph, or as small as a sentence, or as small as a phrase. And the whole thing about it is you can be as creative as you want and have as many of those in there as you want. The key to me to the component content management system and using them accurately and effectively is the tagging. So when I talk to them about tagging, which of course are like, tagging, what is that? I'm like, it's just like when you have on your website, when you're categorizing the resources that you make available to people by topic or by type of content or by date it was released or whatever, that's tagging, right? So it's categorizing, basically, if you want to put it in marketing speak. So you can do the same thing in a component content management system. It actually gives you a little more creativity because you can store all those different pieces, whatever size you want, and bring them together in a bazillion different ways. Whereas if you have the PDF stored in the digital asset management system as is, it's like 3 pages uneditable. You get the whole thing or you get nothing, right? So that's kind of how I address that one. On the editing interface, you're absolutely right. A lot of the old CMSs and CCMSs had an XML, interface there for authoring, and no marketing person, first of all, even have heard of XML, or if they have no idea what it is. They have no idea how to do it. Even HTML, a lot of marketing people don't know. I know how to code HTML because I learned it in TechComm, but every marketing person I know, nobody knows how to code HTML, right? They use tools and stuff that do that for them. So, as you mentioned, that was one of the requirements we had when we were doing the evaluation of CCMSs. It had to have a WYSIWYG editor for the marketing people. I said, I will not even entertain trying to teach these people XML. That's not what they should be spending their time on, right? Sure, if you're a technical author that's working in XML that hooks help up through XML coding and all that, or whatever, to a product that it's inline, that's completely different. And that's part of a technical communicator's role, but it is not part of a marketing communicator's role. So having that WYSIWYG editor, and a couple of the ones that we looked at did have that. And this was about 6 years ago that I was doing this, first making this change. So it was there were not many that had that WYSIWYG editor, but we did find a couple, and that is absolutely key. It also had the XML editor. So if a TechComm person was more comfortable in the XML, they could do that. And then you could flip over to the WYSIWYG for the marketing people.
That's great. That's great. And 6 years ago, wow. I'm actually trying to think who was doing that 6 years ago. Now finally we have some really good WYSIWYG type editors where, rather than feeling like you're writing a fragment, a snippet, a component, whatever you want to call it, it looks and acts like you're writing a document.
Right.
You kind of have that flow, but in the back, it's doing all of that componentization. So right. Very, very interesting. Very interesting. So someone is asking, it's right in line. Even in the component content management systems, do you find that work on a piece still flows from writer to designer? Or is there greater collaboration from the outset involving the technical and marketing, writing, product management, design? So now, if you have everybody in one system, are you finding more collaboration up front?
Yeah, I think if you're doing something like that, you absolutely have to have some sort of governance committee that includes people from every team that's using it. Otherwise, you're just going to end up with a mess with your tags. You're going to end up with a mess with your content components. You're just going to end up with a disorganized problem, right? So I think anytime that you have multiple collaborators from different teams in a tool, the collaboration, it's like, when you bring your hands together, they're going to get closer. There's just, if you have these two, because they're coming to a tool up here, then they're absolutely going to get closer. And that's definitely been what I've seen when I have done this at organizations. My current organization, it's not quite as close between the marketing and the TechComm people, but we have different initiatives going on to make it that way through the various tools. We do not have a CCMS in my current organization. However, we've tried to bring those two groups together more through process. But I think the tool forces it. If you have something like that, even if it's not a CCMS, let's say you're all using Salesforce. Any tool that everybody's in, bringing the more people that are in there, the more people are going to be like, I need a report for X. And then somebody else is like, I do too. So instead of having 3 different reports, having that central governance committee that governs the tool and the processes associated with that tool is going to make that more universal for everyone.
Absolutely. I'm like, yes. One of the techniques that we've used when we've brought on multiple departments into one CCMS is we like to start by setting up each group independently so that they get used to the new environment, get used to writing in that way, and then kind of like remove the barrier between them, right, so that now they can see, oh, well, I have not just my snippets, but look at all these other snippets that I have, to really get them to see, hey, we're not quite so different as we thought we were.
I think that's an excellent approach. And even if you don't have the tool to center that effort around, the processes or even the discussions around how do we use the technical content in the marketing. Okay, so the technical content kind of does their own thing. The marketing people kind of do their own thing with their content. And then the key here is having leaders in the organization, and by leaders, I don't necessarily mean managers. This can be anybody. It can be a technical communicator. It can be a marketing person. It can be somebody that just came into the organization, but someone that's willing to lead the initiative to bring that together and go, okay, you've been doing your thing. You've been doing your thing. What makes the most sense for our customers, our partners, our prospects to bring these together?
Absolutely, absolutely. So this actually leads to another question, which you covered a little bit, but maybe you can expand. And that's, in what ways can the tech writers and the marketers partner to really deliver effective content?
That's a great question. So one way I've sort of alluded to, and that is technical communicators have a much stronger grasp on single sourcing. And it's typically the technical way they do single sourcing, right? I write in XML and I have a content management system and all that. But the fundamentals and the concept of single sourcing is a great thing to teach marketers. I think marketing and content strategy have really just started holding hands in the last few years. In fact, if you've ever been to a marketing conference and you hear the term I know, especially when I first moved into marketing a few years ago, there seemed to be a lot of fear of the term content strategy and marketing because people saw that as a technical thing or a UX thing. And I think more and more, the technical communicators have a lot to teach marketing people about strategy, single sourcing, reuse of content, atomization of content. Now, marketing, I feel like, has a lot to teach TechComm around focusing on the pain point or the problem versus a set of steps for a UI. I think, a lot of times, and we've talked about this in TechComm for 20, 30, 40 years, right? Documenting a software UI is not really that useful to anybody unless you literally have like an entry-level person pushing buttons for you over there. But again, that's not nearly an entry-level person pushing buttons to execute a task in a product is not as useful as an entry-level person pushing buttons and understanding why they're pushing those buttons to make someone's life better, whether it be theirs, their bosses, their teams, whatever. So I feel like that's the benefit for marketing, and that's the big thing that they can teach TechComm, which is like, there is a story here. It's not and when I say story, I don't mean like a tall tale. It doesn't have to be once upon a time and then there's a knight and a dragon and all that. There's a story to everything you write, no matter what kind of content it is. And it might be that your story is about persuading someone, marketing. It might be your story is about helping someone, TechComm, or it might be that your story is about getting somebody up and running so that they can tackle their everyday challenges like professional services, that sort of thing. So there's a story to all of it, and it's bringing the story together to be that one big story. We help you, and here's how, across all these different areas that brings those together.
That is so brilliant and so true. I mean, really, you phrased that incredibly well. And I'm just thinking, in TechComm, we really do need to get away from describing every single button that a person sees on the screen.
Right.
Here's your buttons and here's the table of your buttons. I mean, we really need to get away from that and really get towards, this is how we help people do their jobs.
Absolutely.
This is what you need to do. And what I hear you saying, and I agree with, is that in marketing, they have really researched and figured out how people are going to use this product to do something they couldn't do before. Absolutely. Or do something they were doing better because of the product. And those are the stories where, how do we give you instruction on how to do this thing that you need to do, or how to do it better because you have the tool? That's just brilliant. And I think that this is probably a really good place to stop for a moment and tell our audience a little bit about our sponsor of today's show, which is Zoomin Software. So Zoomin transforms technical product content into a dynamic and intuitive experience so people can find the answers they need to use your product or service. Exactly what we're talking about. So Zoomin's cloud-based solution allows you to streamline content operations and gain powerful analytics so you can refine your content strategy and improve customer self-service. Point your browser to zoominsoftware.com to learn more. I'd also like to remind the audience that you can learn more about Zoomin Software by visiting the Attachments tab located below your webinar viewing panel. And if you click that tab, you'll open a document repository where you can request a private demonstration of Zoomin Software and access additional content about the platform, including several white papers and case studies. So I think that that's a good place to talk a bit about bringing those things together. Okay, let's talk a bit about skills. What skills, since you made this switch from one world to another and brought them together, what skills do you feel are directly transferable between TechComm and marketing?
So I would say both disciplines rely on a single principle that you start with, which is knowing your audience. Whether you're writing for a technical audience or a non-technical audience, it doesn't matter what type of content you're writing. You can do it if you know your audience. So I know, a lot of people choose technical writing and feel like marketing is all fluff. And I can tell you that for probably the first 10 years of my TechComm career, I thought marketing is all fluffy and I just make a bunch of stuff up. Marketing is a lot of work, y'all. Marketing is an art and a science. And whereas I feel like TechComm's a little bit more of a science. It's logical. There's facts involved. And of course there is in marketing too, but there is a lot of analytics and measurement and analysis and research that goes on in marketing. So understanding your audience is the number one skill, I would say, that flows across both of them. And then you're able to write it. Like I know when I first started in marketing, I was like, there's no way I can write marketing content. I am so left-brained. And now I write marketing content all the time, and some people even consider it good. So, it is possible, but that's because I focus on my audience. If I'm somebody that wants to go buy something, I own a business and I'm trying to go, because I do B2B marketing, business to business marketing. Of course, there's B2C, business to consumer as well, and they're a little different. But if I own a business and I'm going to buy something from another business, what are the questions that I'm asking? What am I looking for? If I have this pain point, how is this company going to help me with that? So that knowing your audience is essential to what you're doing. I would say another key skill that is transferable is communication. When you're in TechComm and you are talking with your SMEs, for example, about how this works and how it's going to help with this and how you need to think about it to go document it. It's the same kind of thing with marketing. So in marketing, you're doing the same kind of communication. It's just you're talking to a different set of people. So your SMEs might be potential customers. It might be existing customers. What do you like about our solution? Did we help you solve this problem, and how and why? We write things like customer case studies that talk about that sort of thing. Okay, this customer said X about us, this existing customer. How can we translate that into something super attractive that future customers might be interested in? So that's another one that I would say. Probably the third skill that I would bring up is just technical knowledge. And I'm going to give you a little anecdote about when I got laid off, and pretty quickly after I moved into marketing. So I had a senior leadership role in a marketing organization. It was actually the one I referenced earlier, where I went through the whole initiative with content strategy and all that. And I got laid off about 6 or 7 months into that. I'd only officially been on a marketing team for 6 months, but I was a senior director. And I can tell you, I was scared to death about finding another position at the seniority level I was at in marketing, because I wanted to stay in marketing. And I was like, everyone's gonna look at my resume and say, you've been in marketing 6 months. I'm not gonna hire you as a director or VP. Are you crazy? Well, as I was interviewing, something that was surprised me was how many CMOs, CEOs, VPs of marketing that I talked to that were hiring that said, your technical background is a huge help in marketing. And I was like, what? And so this goes back to what I was saying earlier about the art and science of marketing. There are so many technical tools and tech that you use in a marketing tech stack nowadays that a lot of marketers just do not understand. They don't understand the technical aspects of them. They don't understand how they integrate to give you a big picture of something. And if you think back, okay, this is exactly what we did in TechComm, right? We talk about product integrations. We talk about technical connectors. We talk about APIs. We talk about, all of these things that I never realized would be so applicable in marketing. So that technical background that you might think, marketing's all fluff. No, marketing's not all fluff. All that technical stuff will come with you and will give you a leg up if you're looking to move into marketing, because of those scientific aspects that are involved nowadays in marketing.
Wow, very, very interesting. Do you find that the basic vocabulary that is used in TechComm is transferable to marketing, or do you think that there are terminology differences that need to be maintained? How do you sort of bridge that?
Yeah, I think there are definitely terminology differences, but I still feel like underneath it, it's the same. Like one thing I realized after I moved into marketing that, when you're in TechComm working with developers, for example, we always get hit with, well, what's the problem? I can write that. I can do that. And so I was like, when I moved into marketing, I was so excited that I was going to be, done with that mindset. Okay, y'all, salespeople are the same way. So working in marketing, salespeople will be like, well, I can write that. I can do that, and think they can do it just as well, and not understanding the audience, not having put the research and time in that we have in marketing to really understand that. Not that sales doesn't understand the audience. They do. They have to sell to them, right? But we do all the enablement for sales based on our research and analysis. So, understanding that aspect of it is, one thing. Now, the terminology may be different in the way we approach things in TechComm and in marketing, but the fundamentals are still there. So you just have to do a little bit of digging to go, well, what do you mean by that? So ask the questions for sure to make sure that, your TechComm brain that might think this is a marketing fluffy thing or something that you may have heard in the past is actually what somebody in marketing is talking about, and vice versa, because I can guarantee you that you have a bigger advantage in TechComm understanding what's going on in marketing than vice versa. Marketing people are kind of focused on their task, and there's a lot of different areas of marketing, right? And they all come together to represent a brand, for example, and do the type of campaigns and outreach and all of that stuff that we do in marketing. But understanding that that goes both ways. And here's the other thing about marketing, as you guys can probably guess, TechComm, you use one term, right? I'm documenting X and we shall call it this and it shall be this forever. Marketing is not like that. Marketing uses multiple terms because they're trying to be persuasive. They're trying to be creative. They're trying to be, a little, and I will not use the word fluffy because it is not fluffy, but they are trying to make it, go to your heart, plead to your emotions. Because, if you're like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. I have to have this now because this is going to fix problem X, X, Y, and Z. So that's, a little bit different with marketing. But I think if you understand the fundamentals, which are pretty much the same, and ask the questions about the terminology, you'll get to where you want to be.
Very interesting. Very interesting. So engineering is to TechComm as sales is to marketing.
Big time.
I got it. I totally understand. I love it. Okay, we have a question that I think is appropriate. Have you been able to improve the usefulness of the documentation? For example, not how to use the dialog box, itself, but when and why you were using a feature through your success in strategic content management?
Yes, that's a great question. Absolutely. I think, again, you go back to when you're trying to educate people to write in a certain way or to think about how they write in a certain way, it's all about what's in it for them. And I mean the writer. Okay, so you need to know what's in it for the user of that documentation and the reader of that documentation for sure. But what is in it for the writer? And with TechComm and writing in that way, what they're doing is they are actually writing content that could be revenue producing. And that is what a lot of people do not realize. So marketing people don't want to go pull tech content and use it in the buyer's journey and the way that they look at, how somebody progresses from having no idea that company or solution exists to want to buy it tomorrow. They don't want to use tech content that's not useful. But if you have content that continues that marketing story that we were talking about and gives you further detail and expands upon it, then it's much more likely they're going to reference the tech content in their marketing content. They're going to use it as calls to action when we have webinars or when we have campaigns or something like that. Then if you just have, oh, okay, well, here it is. Here's another UI, great. What am I supposed to do with that in marketing? Nobody cares about that. Nobody's going to go buy a product because the documentation says click these 3 buttons. They're going to, potentially buy a product because the documentation is so good that it's available in multiple formats, explains and continues that marketing story. I kind of think of the story of a brand or a company as a hierarchy. Really, it's a messaging hierarchy. And you kind of start with the company messaging, which is, we are so-and-so. This is what we do. This is why we exist and are in the world, right? Okay, yes, there's the whole, we want to make money, but we want to make money doing this and helping you in this way. So there's that company messaging. And then the layer below it is either, depending on how large your company is, either portfolio or messaging or product and solution messaging. So that brings it a layer down. It says, okay, we're this company and we are these people and we want to help you in these ways. And then here's how these particular solutions or products or services will do that. You want to do X? We have a solution for that. And then if you want to add this problem on to problem A, then we have another solution that integrates with that and we can help you in that way. And then the next layer of that messaging hierarchy is then what we talked about earlier, which is now let me show you how we do that in these products and solutions. And it's not about by clicking these 3 buttons. It's about using this solution in this way to be able to solve your problems.
That makes a lot of sense to me. And, study after study that I've read, and it's probably your experience, shows that people who are making buying decisions, particularly B2B, particularly in tech, really do look at the technical content as part of that buying decision.
Absolutely.
And right, so TechComm needs to understand this, and TechComm needs to understand that telling someone how to click each button on a screen does not promote someone wanting to buy your product. But,
right.
I think that this idea of understanding the issues that people are having, the reasons they're buying or, looking at your product, and then those instructions of, well, let us show you how to solve these problems. You happen to click on these buttons, but this is the sequence and why, and this
Exactly.
is what happens. Yes,
Right.
that makes just perfect sense to me. And it really brings the story full circle as well, for me. Let's see. What are the biggest differences between marketing and TechComm, or are they just 2 sides of the same coin?
Ooh. Well, there's definitely some differences. I think marketing spans a larger audience, a larger set of audiences, I believe, than TechComm does. TechComm, typically, when you're writing about how a solution helps you, most likely you have a couple of audiences. You have the admin user, and then you have the regular user. So you might get up to 3, maybe there's a different role. It's a little more role-based. In marketing, typically in B2B marketing, especially, there's not one buyer that we're trying to appeal to. We are actually appealing to a set of buyers that form a buying committee. So when you think about producing content for that audience, you're trying to think of, okay, you probably have the practitioner on the buying committee. You probably have the person that writes the check. You have the director of the practitioner or VP of the practitioner. You have other people in the organization that might integrate into that solution or service or product. And so there's usually a group of anywhere from 3 to 7 people and roles that you're trying to appeal to. So you have a larger set of audiences. The other thing about marketing is there are different parts of what we call the buyer's journey or the customer journey that we have to develop content for. So as I referenced earlier, you kind of start with, okay, I'm realizing that I have an issue here. I've got a problem I need to solve. So we call that awareness in marketing. Someone's becoming aware that they have a problem that they need to solve. And then the next step would be, depending on what buyer's journey or funnel that you might use, it might be consideration. Okay, so I'm starting to realize I have a problem. I need to consider how I'm going to solve this problem. Is it with people? Can I add more resources to the issue? Can I buy a tool or solution, product or solution or service, which is where you marketing your solution or service comes in? Can I, rearrange some things in my tech stack that I already have? There's all these different ways. And then you move into intent. Okay, no, I've decided I'm going to look at this type of solution, and I want to look at these 4 companies that do that. And this is, goes to evaluation. Okay, what are my requirements? How do these 4 companies, 5 companies I'm looking at meet my requirements? And then of course there's the decision. I've decided to purchase, this particular solution from this particular company. So that's a traditional 4 level, what we call marketing or sales funnel, also buyer's journey. So when you look at having to build content for each of those, it's a little bit different. Whereas TechComm it's at the end of the buyer's journey. The product has already been bought. People are typically using that content after they've implemented the solution, or using that content to help them implement this and then use the solution. So more audience types, more stages of the whole journey, and that just multiple and honestly more channels for distribution. So, with TechComm, typically nobody really does printed manuals anymore, but that is one way you could do it. You might have how-to videos, you have inline help, you have your documentation on a website, right? With marketing, there's probably at least double that with the way that we put out marketing campaigns, content, whatever. We have our website, right? We have social media on all the various channels there. We have paid media, there's little ads. Like if you go look at, I always use this example because this is me all the way. If I find a pair of boots on Nordstrom that I love, and I keep looking at it, I'm trying to decide if I buy it, I guarantee you those boots show up on every website I'm at, right? That's retargeting. So that's another way to do it. What content are you there? So when you're putting a content strategy together for marketing, or even just thinking about how marketing and TechComm are different, there's just more. It's exponential to what you have to consider for a technical content strategy.
That makes sense, which really leads us back to, if marketing was single sourcing, it would probably be easier.
Absolutely. It makes it a lot easier.
We're just going around in circles today.
Mm-hmm.
Another question came in that I think is pertinent to this. Folks, keep your questions coming. They're really great. It says, Alyssa, how does your organization handle customer communications related to post-sales customer onboarding, ongoing customer engagement, notification of service changes? It's kind of sits between MarCom and TechComm, but it's often completely forgotten too.
Yes. Oh, I'm so glad you mentioned this. Whoever asked this question, thank you, because marketing is nowhere near as mature as it needs to be across the industry, in my opinion, with customer marketing, what we call customer marketing, because a lot of people feel like once that sale is done, we're like, oh, we got it. Let's move on and get some more people. Okay, y'all, I work at a SaaS company. We have monthly recurring revenue. Yes, people sign, multi-year contracts or single-year contracts, but guess what? When that contract is up, it is not guaranteed that we are going to retain that customer. So we should always be marketing to our customers as well. So in my organization, we actually have a dedicated customer marketing manager. She sits in our product marketing organization and works between sales, product, and marketing to make sure that we are marketing to our customers. What are the ongoing benefits of our solution? How do we make sure that we are adding benefits so you want to renew that contract and keep your monthly SaaS subscription going? What else does she work on? She works on case studies. We talked about case studies earlier. Case studies are so valuable in B2B marketing because if I'm a business and I'm looking to buy a solution, I want to see success with a business like mine with that same solution, right? And just to give you a little bit of an example of how this can be a challenge sometimes, I work at a cybersecurity company. So the nice thing is you don't ever want to hear from us, really, because that means you probably have a breach or a potential breach or a threat that we've detected. So it can be difficult if you work in an industry like that to show your value, consistently show your value, because if you don't hear from us, that's good news. But then that can be switched around and somebody can say, well, I never hear from you. What value am I getting from you? Well, the fact that you haven't gotten breached because we've caught these threats, that's the value. So you have to be creative in how you market to those existing customers. So to give you an example of one thing we're doing, we actually have come up with what we call a service value report. And it's kind of like a health check, and also shows you what all we have done for you over the past quarter. These are quarterly reports that we give to our customers, and actually have calls with them and walk through them. So yes, you didn't hear from us last quarter, but this is why. And then we'll walk through the service value report and say, okay, we caught 38 indicators of compromise that could have potentially been a breach had we not caught them. That could have cost you X number of dollars had you been breached. That breach could have sat in your system for 29 days before it was ever detected, blah, blah, blah. So that is one creative way that we've come up with a way to market to our customers. Things like that, regular check-ins, monthly check-ins, something that you can show them, the case studies that come in, things that are in the news. I don't know, probably most of you, if you're in tech at all, have heard of the Log4j vulnerability that came through a couple, well, I guess it was about a month ago now, maybe a month and a half. Hopefully it didn't do anything to you. If you're one of our customers, one thing that we put out multiple blogs explaining what we did to catch it and how we prevented against it, and then sent communications to the customer. And another way that this person also mentioned the customer communications. So we have a console for our solution that actually automatically sends customer communications if some huge alert or vulnerability like that might come out. And then we immediately follow it up with something from our product marketing team that says, okay, here's what we're doing. We have knowledge base articles, and this goes back to enterprise-wide content strategy. We have a team working on the knowledge base. We have a team working on the blogs. We have a team working on the actual technical solution. And somebody's got to bring all those people together to talk about, are we being consistent in our story, how we address this, what the issue is, and how we benefited you from addressing it in this way. So that customer marketing role and function is so vastly important. And it requires just as much creativity as it does if you're marketing to prospects.
Amazing. I think it sounds like you've really built a plan so that when an event happens, that
absolutely, and it's cross-functional, right? It's not just about marketing, because if I'm the IT director that's worried about my systems being breached, a lovely blog about what Log4j means is fine, but I want to know what you're doing technically, right? So bringing together the technical content producers and the marketing content producers, it is a holistic approach that is necessary in something like that, and especially in customer marketing.
That's fantastic, because I was going to ask you if there were times when the technical content and marketing content should be incorporated. And this sounds like a perfect time. Are there additional times where you would do something cross-functional and bring that content together?
Yes, absolutely. So I can give you another example. So I run partner marketing at my organization, and we have 400 partners worldwide that different types of partners. So some of our partners are resellers, and then some of our partners are managed service providers, which means that they actually handle the support for our joint customers versus our resellers, where we handle the support. We have a monthly partner newsletter, and we talk in that newsletter about something like that. We talk about any product updates that have come that might benefit not only our customers, but our partners' customers that they are supporting. And then, we have, because some of our partners are also our customers, we talk about, the technical aspects of our console and some dashboards we have in there and the benefits to our partners of using our technical solution. So all of that, again, brings together that marketing aspect of, hey, here's our sales incentives for the quarter or whatever, but we also bring that content in of, here's the technical stuff you need to know to serve your customers better for the partners themselves.
That makes a lot of sense. It really does. What a challenge. It
keeps us busy.
It absolutely does. I think your company is very lucky that they have someone like you who has really seen it all. Yeah. I think, incredible. Let's see. I'm looking at some of the additional questions folks have asked. Someone would like to know, what do you think is the most exciting thing happening in content today?
Ooh, that's broad. I think everything about content is exciting. So that is a great question. Oh, let's see. What can I pick? I really think content operations is a big, I don't want to say trend, but a big thing happening that I think is essential to making all content more effective and useful. Even though it's kind of considered a technical thing, I think it needs to be addressed across any organization that delivers content. One thing we've done for far too long, and again, I'll go back to marketing, because when I first got into marketing and started looking at content processes, or lack thereof, shall we say, I was appalled. I'm like, there is so much time being wasted. And so building out a content operations function and looking at end-to-end workflows and how you can use tools to make it easier and not redo work and all of that is huge to me, because if you have something like that implemented, you get to spend more time doing what the marketing people considering creative fun stuff, and what the technical people consider, adding more value to that technical content. If you're spending all this time spinning your wheels because you're rewriting a product overview, or you're having to manually push a button to run a single sourcing conversion to PDF, or single sourcing conversion to online help, or whatever. That's boring stuff, right? I mean, we all have boring parts of our jobs, but nobody wants to spend the majority of their time doing the boring stuff. They want to do the cool stuff. So in order to write more fun, effective, useful content across marketing or TechComm, I feel like content operations is a necessity, and content engineering and all that back end stuff that may not be as exciting, but boy, the results are once you get it going.
Absolutely, absolutely. This brings me to one of the final questions. Can you talk a bit about the tech stack in tech docs versus marketing? We've already said we need to do an entire webinar just on the tech stacks, but maybe just a little bit about that.
Yes. So I think again, just like I was talking earlier about more audiences, more channels, more stages of the journey. Marketing is the same with tech stack. There's actually a famous infographic out there that talks about all the different marketing tools that you can use and solutions that you can use for various things in marketing. And there's so many different aspects of marketing that to try to wade through all that is just insane. But like, if I look at the tech stack where I am, and we're considered a mid-sized company. We're not even a large enterprise like Oracle or Dell or Cisco, somebody like that. We have an intent tool, which actually helps you determine, which people at companies are showing intent to buy. So they're a little further down in the funnel. We have Marketo, which is our email and marketing automation tool. We have a couple of other tools that help with intent and analyzing business information for our prospects. We have, we have Smartsheet, which helps us plan progress. We have probably 10 or 15, I'm not even going to go through them all, tools that we have to figure out, A, how to use, and B, how to integrate, and C, how to measure effectiveness of, right? So it's just so much larger, and there's so many different aspects. Whereas when you look at TechComm and the tech stack there, it's primarily around building the content and publishing the content. And then some of it's delivering the content, but there's just not as many, right? You might have your CMS, your CCMS, you probably have a conversion tool of some type. And then if you have inline help, you might have a help tool. If you do video content, probably a video tool. So I would say it's probably about half, in my experience from where I've worked, half of the tools that you would have on a marketing tech stack.
Wow, that sounds like a big learning curve when you
move
over. Holy camoly. Well, gee, we have come to the end of the show here. And Alyssa, I just really want to thank you for making time to be on the show today. It was just so much fun talking to you, and want to thank everybody in the audience for fantastic questions. Really, really great. So I invite you to register for the Content Advantage show on February 22nd, 2022, when Scott Abel will interview John Horodysky, Managing Director of Innovation Platform Salt Flats, about content capabilities made possible when organizations take full advantage of the power of taxonomies, which we discussed today. They will discuss how savvy organizations leverage the descriptive power of metadata and combine it with the classification capabilities made possible by enterprise taxonomy to develop content experiences at scale. Very important topic. Finally, before you sign off, We'd appreciate it if you take a moment to let us know what you thought about today's show. You can use the Rate This tab part of the interface located in your webinar viewing panel to give us a 1 through 5 rating, where 5 is the best. Feel free to also use the text box provided. Leave us a comment or a suggested topic or a suggested text for a future episode of the Content Advantage. Well, you've been watching the Content Advantage, and today's show is being recorded. Shortly after we sign off, the link that you're using right now to view today's live program will also feature a recording of the show that you can watch on demand or share with others, and we hope you do. So on behalf of myself, Val Swisher, and our sponsor, Zoomin Software, I'd like to thank you for making the time to watch our show today. We hope you'll join us for an upcoming episode of the Content Advantage. Until then, be safe, be well, and keep doing great work. Thank you.
Ensure your customers find the answers they need with Zoomin. Bring together product content from all teams and sources to deliver a unified, personalized content experience. Check us out at www.zoominsoftware.com.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye now.